It does not surprise me. I've heard a lot actually about what's going on with your media in Germany, and I know obviously a bit about what you're dealing with.
There's no free speech basically in Germany.
He gave an incredible speech in Germany, and obviously I know a lot about what's going on with you guys and migration and immigration and borders and all those things. They want you to be guilty for your ancestors' sins forever.
Yes.
And no one is guilty for their ancestors' sins, number one, but certainly no one's guilty for their ancestors' sins forever. But they've used the human empathy that Germans have against them, you know what I mean? And that's deeply dangerous. So when they call me racist and bigoted and all these things, homophobic and all this stuff.
Dave, nice to have you here. I'm very happy to speak to you. You're a very big YouTuber right now in the US, and you formed, I think, the alternative media in the US with a bunch of other guys. For us as Germans, it's a big issue with the media, alternative media, also in Europe and in Germany. And our first question, or my first question, would be, what was the idea to start with YouTube?
Yeah, well, first off, it's a pleasure to be with you. I mentioned right before we started that I've only done a few interviews over the years with German media, but the biggest one I did was about 8 years ago. I had Der Spiegel spend 2 days with me at my house in my studio. They came to a college event that I did.
How come you did that?
The interviewer was very nice, smiled a lot, and then they put me on the cover of Der Spiegel, a picture of me sitting on my couch
basically
like this, big
Hitler?
American flag behind me, and it said I think it said I was the leader of the alt-right.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and it said, I remember very specifically, it said it was trying to paint me as an elitist, so it said I had a very fancy Italian coffee maker in my kitchen, which was a Nespresso machine. That's all it was, just an Nespresso machine. But in any event, well, it does not surprise me. I've heard a lot actually about what's going on with your media in Germany, and I know obviously a bit about what you're dealing with.
for example, also said there's no free speech basically in Germany.
He gave an incredible speech in Germany, and obviously I know a lot about what's going on with you guys and migration and immigration and borders and all those things, and that's deeply connected to what's happening here in Hungary and really what every country in the West is fighting to one degree or another. And as for the media component of it, when I started my show in 2013, it was at the sort of the beginning of YouTube and the beginning of a lot of these things. And I just thought that every time I turned on CNN or mainstream media, I just felt they were lying and or making me angry, or I felt stupider after. There was just nothing thoughtful. So I thought, could I sit across from someone for an hour and not edit it and ask the relevant questions and see what could happen? And I guess I was right, because, the show just blew up just like that. When I was doing it at the beginning, the only two people really that were doing long form interviews were me and Joe Rogan. It obviously worked out for Joe, and I guess it worked out for me. But, now everybody has a podcast. There's more podcasts than people. But I'm really glad to see that, because the mainstream media, look, I always say, they don't have to be great. They really don't have to be great. Most people in Western societies, we're free people for the most part, so we're distracted by a lot of stuff. And because of that, they don't have to be great. You could lie to us about a lot of stuff and we'd be okay. They chose to be unbearably horrible. They chose to be as bad as they could possibly be. And I suppose what that left us with was people turning to people like me for some sense.
What was the hardest moment you had with them?
Oh my God. I mean, the Der Spiegel one is just one in a long list of people. The New York Times. The New York Times put me on the cover. Also said I was one of the leaders of the alt-right.
So you're on a bunch of covers now.
Yeah, but they years ago, it's funny. Years ago, they would put me on these covers and on these articles, and I would be annoyed. It's not fun. You don't like being called a racist, and especially from a German perspective. And I think they're really one of the things that they've really done that's very twisted to good German people is they want you to be guilty for your ancestors' sins forever.
Yes.
And no one is guilty for their ancestors' sins, number one, but certainly no one's guilty for their ancestors' sins forever. But they've used the human empathy that Germans have against them, you know what I mean? And that's deeply dangerous. So when they call me racist and bigoted and all these things, homophobic and all this stuff, it's like, at some point, if you are not that, march forward.
Personally, I think they want to try to make the Germans feel better. See, we are not as bad as the rest. There's some.
I see. So they took me as a token to make you guys. If that helps you, I'm happy to help.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, what would you recommend to, let's say, alternative media in Germany? What is the right strategy to become in the end, I would say you're mainstream now. Are you mainstream in the
Well,
US?
it's hard to say if there is a mainstream anymore. I mean, that's one of the things about the rise of alt media and the descent of mainstream
media. How many
media
people do you reach?
I mean, you know, I've got over 3 million subscribers. My show had 850 million views last year. Views. Not
Just in the month?
No, for the year. 850 million for the year. Almost 1 billion views in a year. That's not including audio or anything else. I mean, we've built something really nice that, you know, every year gets bigger and bigger, and I'm very proud of that. I would say for you, and for anyone that's doing this, it doesn't matter if you're in Germany or US or anywhere, you know, you got to play a little bit of a game. So you have to play a little bit of the YouTube game with thumbnails and titles and some of that nonsense. You just do. I wish it was another way, but it is what it is. You can hate the player or you can hate the game. So you got to decide.
Yes.
But I would say more than anything else, I mean, tell people the truth. Tell people the truth. I don't lie to my audience. I don't treat them like they're idiots. It doesn't mean I'm going to get everything right. I correct myself on my show. Sometimes I say something on my show and we go to commercial for a second and my guys come back and they're like, actually, Dave, you got that wrong, or the date was wrong, or the not. And I gladly correct myself. Have a little humility. Show people that
you're real.
That you're real. And that's the thing that mainstream is unable to do, because so many of them are actually lefties at heart more than journalists. So they're pretending that they're unbiased while they're unbelievably balanced. And I think if you're authentic, people can see that, and that's the key to everything.
By the way, you talked about the Spiegel. I talked to one of the journalists of Spiegel, and she said to me in personal, she said, we are not neutral. Like, we have our agenda.
Well, you know, when the guy called me, so I emailed the guy after I texted him, I don't remember, and I said, I can't believe you did this. I let you in my house, you spent hours with me, 2 days, watched the show, all this stuff. I cannot believe you wrote this article. It's so profoundly dishonest. I said you had several errors, blah, blah, blah. He said, Dave, if I wanted to write a bad article about you, we wouldn't have used a good picture. Meaning that I looked okay in the picture because I was leaning back, that they would have used like an ugly picture of me. And I thought, just right there, that you're just showing me the thinness of what you're doing, you know?
But, you're lucky it's just a German magazine and not the American or whatever. But anyway, so would you say there's a cultural war now going on in the US?
Oh, yeah. There's a big cultural war, I would say. At the moment...
And on what point are you now? Like, are you taking over? Are you winning?
Yes. I would say the woke era, in terms of the culture, is largely over. Yeah. You know, 5 years ago, there was I could have named you a dozen people that were openly taking on the trans stuff and the racist stuff and all that. Now there's millions of people. There are moms that are now involved in school board meetings. You know, the obvious things. Boys are not girls. You know, like there are obvious things. So we have, and Trump being reelected is the ultimate proof that the culture has shifted. But I would say, you know, you take a win, and a lot of people,
but
I think...
What is the order? Like, do you need a different politician, or do you start with culture?
No, you start with culture.
Okay.
That's what Donald Trump understood more than anything else. So I would say, I don't know that many of your political leaders right now in Germany, although I'm no big fan of Angela Merkel. Thank God you got rid of her. She will pay, really. Her legacy will pay for what she did to your country. You can't let in about 2 million people. I think she let in and gave them all these services.
I think 4 already.
Was
4 million.
4? I mean, it's just extraordinary. What did she think was going to happen to Germany? And now I see she shows up to events and she gets booed. And it's like, yeah, you deserve it, lady. That's what should happen. But you have to win culture first, because most people don't really care about politics. They don't. They don't think about it that much. In the West, you know, we're relatively free despite all the problems, so you go about your day. But Donald Trump was able to capture the culture. He was able to do it through humor and through some crazy language and mean tweets. And because of that, he captured that, and then he's doing the political. You can't just capture the political. You have to capture the culture, and then you can do the political.
Talking about culture, the Harvard University is now, like, defunded?
Well, they're working on it, and it should be defunded. It should not get $1 of taxpayer money. Harvard is sitting on a $54 billion endowment. It's basically a private hedge fund, and they openly discriminate against blacks and whites, and it was Jews for years about admissions. We know they've ushered in all of this woke nonsense. They allowed these Hamas takeovers of their campus. They deserve none of our money. And I would say congratulations to everyone that is teaching there that has been part of this, because you're done. You're done. The Harvard degree, which was the most lauded possible piece of paper you could get to get a job 20 years ago,
The German government invited now the campus to Germany.
Watch out. You have enough radicals in your country. Yeah.
All right. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Likewise.
I see the time is ticking, and you have some other interviews.
I got to keep talking.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Very much. Enjoyed it.